You woke up this morning to an alarm clock you hate and drove to a building you despise because a number on a screen dictates your physical movement. You stared at the steering wheel and wondered why a decade of consistent effort leaves you trapped in the exact same routine.
The architecture of wealth operates on 6 distinct levels of power. The masses fight brutal wars on the bottom layers, while the elite manipulate the board from the clouds. Escaping the human farm requires identifying your exact location inside the invisible prison. You cannot pick the lock until you trace the shape of the iron bars. The first level of money is a deep underground pit disguised as a comfortable modern life.
In his 1899 book, The Theory of the Leisure Class, Thorstein Veblen watches a factory worker walking through a dirty industrial street. The worker earns just enough to feed his family. He spends a massive fraction of his meager wage on a shiny silver pocket watch. He wants the wealthy managers to notice the silver chain dangling from his rough coat. He trades his future survival to mimic the appearance of the ruling elite. The first level of money is the deep deficit. You sit in this tier when you owe more capital to the banks than you can generate with your own 2 hands. You borrow money to consume products that depreciate the moment you touch them. The elite encourage this behavior because a citizen drowning in consumer debt is a citizen who can never mount an effective rebellion. They sell you shiny chains made of paper. Ignorance funds the cage. You participated in this exact mimicry last month when you financed a premium vehicle you cannot afford. You signed a heavy loan agreement because you wanted the people in traffic to assume you hold power. You traded the absolute freedom of your future hours to impress strangers you will never meet. The master extracts your labor and sells you the illusion of prestige to keep you on the wheel, running forever.
The invisible chains of status keep the lowest levels crowded. But climbing out of that mud requires recognizing the specific danger of the second tier. You cut your spending, pay off the heavy loans, and crawl out of the deep deficit. You arrive at the second level of money feeling a false sense of absolute victory. You stopped bleeding, but you lack the stored energy required to take a single step forward in the dark. In his 1895 book, The Crowd, Gustave Le Bon observes a Parisian worker during a period of massive political unrest. The worker finishes a brutal shift at the factory and receives a handful of copper coins. He walks straight to the market and spends every single coin on bread and cheap wine for his evening meal. He wakes up the next morning with empty pockets and a desperate need to return to the heavy machines. Hunger forces the march.
The second level of money is the fragile edge. You generate the exact amount of capital required to cover your basic biological existence. You pay the rent, buy the groceries, and sit at a zero balance the day before your next paycheck arrives. You operate in a state of constant biological panic disguised as a stable routine. A single broken wagon wheel or a harsh winter fever destroys the entire foundation of your life.
You felt this precise panic last Tuesday when your car engine made a strange grinding noise on the highway. You turned off the radio and listened in sheer terror. You calculated the cost of a mechanic against your current checking balance and realized you were one repair bill away from total ruin.
You survive on the very edge of the blade. You trade your hours for bare survival. You hope the machine never breaks.
Surviving on the edge drains your mental bandwidth, but crossing the threshold to the third tier introduces a new psychological trap designed to rot your stored energy. You reduce your baseline of survival and stack the remaining surplus inside a traditional bank account. You reach the third level of money and breathe a sigh of heavy relief. You built a small fortress, but you built the thick walls using melting blocks of ice. Comfort disguises the rot.
In his 146 BC text, The Histories, Polybius details the actions of a wealthy merchant living in the shadow of the Roman Empire. The merchant fears the chaos of the coming wars. He sells his productive farmland and hoards massive chests of silver coins in a deep underground cellar. The empire debases the currency to fund the vast military campaigns. The merchant opens his chest a decade later and finds his purchasing power destroyed.
The third level of money is the false safety of the cash buffer. You save 6 months of living expenses and feel untouchable. The ruling class encourages you to sit in this exact tier. They print massive amounts of new fiat currency while you hoard your small stack of paper notes. The cost of basic human survival rises while your paper loses its silent weight. The bank steals your energy without breaking a window. You checked your traditional savings account yesterday and smiled at the stable digital number on the glowing screen. You did not calculate the rising cost of raw meat, fuel, and electricity against that stagnant digit. You hold a safety net made of thin, rotting thread. The bank pays you a fraction of a percent, while lending your money out to generate massive returns for the true owners. Paper is a melting shield. Stacking melting paper creates a temporary illusion of safety, but crossing the threshold to real power demands a brutal change in your relationship to risk. Moving to the fourth level requires you to stop viewing money as a defensive wall and start viewing it as an aggressive weapon. You must convert your stagnant paper notes into ruthless soldiers that march into the market and capture new territory while you sleep in your bed.
In his 1532 book, Florentine Histories, Niccolo Machiavelli details the rise of the Medici banking family. Cosimo de' Medici sits in a quiet stone courtyard holding a heavy ledger. He does not swing a hammer or carry thick stone blocks in the hot sun. He deploys his gold coins to purchase the debts of powerful politicians and the trade routes of desperate merchants. He converts static metal into a machine that generates continuous new force.
The fourth level of money is the escape velocity. You use your surplus to buy productive assets instead of consumer liabilities. You purchase fractional ownership in profitable businesses, acquire commercial land, and build digital machines that solve specific problems. You build a parallel supply line that generates capital without demanding your physical presence. Machiavelli understood that physical exertion is the tool of the expendable foot soldier. The ruler acquires power and delegates the heavy lifting. Ownership delegates the pain.
You stared at this massive gap last month when you worked 30 hours of forced corporate overtime. You received a larger paycheck and felt a brief moment of absolute victory. You traded the best hours of your physical youth for a linear increase in paper currency. You stopped earning money the exact second you walked out of the heavy glass doors. You lack an asset that prints money in the dark. You sell your absolute prime Delegating the physical suffering removes the heavy chains from your wrists, but the fifth tier of the pyramid grants you the ultimate human luxury. The assets you purchased in the fourth tier grow and multiply until the cash they yield exceeds your total monthly living expenses. You cross the invisible barrier into the fifth level of money. You hold the keys to the fortress. Your survival is no longer tied to your physical labor. In his 1935 essay, In Praise of Idleness, Bertrand Russell observes a wealthy landowner walking through a massive private garden at midday. The landowner does not rush to complete a task or answer a superior. He reads a book, studies philosophy, and thinks with immense focus about the structure of the world. He removed the pressure of immediate survival from his daily existence. The absence of panic allows his mind to process reality.
The fifth level of money is the reclamation of your finite time. You wake up on a Tuesday morning and choose your actions based on genuine curiosity instead of desperate obligation. You hold the power to refuse unreasonable demands, reject toxic managers, and walk away from bad deals without hesitation. The yield from your assets covers the rent, the food, and the medical bills. You bought back the remaining decades of your actual human life.
You dreamed of this exact absolute power last Monday when a toxic manager handed you a meaningless project at the end of the day. You gripped your coffee mug and imagined handing in a resignation letter without a single flinch. You swallowed your pride and accepted the task because you owe a massive payment on the first of the month. You lack the hidden surplus required to say the word no.
Securing your absolute independence allows you to step off the battlefield entirely. But the final tier of the pyramid transforms you into the person drawing the map. The sixth level shifts the fundamental definition of capital from a tool of personal survival to a mechanism of mass human control. The people operating in this ultimate tier do not think about paying bills or buying luxury cars. They think about bending the arc of human history. Ambition removes the ceiling. In his 1832 book, On War, Karl von Clausewitz watches a Prussian commander stand on a high ridge overlooking a vast, muddy battlefield. The commander does not look at the individual soldiers bleeding in the dirt. He studies the deep supply lines, the fast rivers, and the elevated terrain. He moves entire divisions of men with a simple flick of his wrist. He treats human energy as a raw material to secure his ultimate objective. The sixth level of money is the architect tier. The individual at this level possesses more capital than they could ever spend in 1,000 lifetimes. They stop buying consumer goods and start buying media networks, ambitious politicians, and the modern educational curriculum. They shape the deep desires of the crowded herd. They dictate the rules of the economic game you were forced to play. They view the lower 5 levels as a massive farm to harvest.
You voted in a local election last year, believing you had a voice in the direction of your city. You did not see the massive flow of architect capital that selected the approved candidates long before you received your paper ballot. The sixth level dictates the strict parameters of your reality while keeping you distracted by the pleasant illusion of choice. You play a brutal game rigged by men you will never meet. The board ignores the pieces.
You wake up tomorrow and trade another piece of your finite existence for a currency that depreciates before sunset.
You return to the cubicle and spin the heavy wheel to generate profit for the architect. Whoever applied the dark mechanics of capital manipulation escaped the bleeding herd and built an unshakable fortress on the high ground. They studied the specific rules of the invisible ladder and climbed away from the noise of the desperate crowd.
Cosimo de' Medici refused to let his gold sit idle in a heavy vault. He viewed every coin as a mercenary, ready to march into hostile territory and capture new resources. He funded the enemies of his rivals and bought the silence of the screaming mob. He converted his surplus capital into a massive, invisible machine that dictated the future of an entire nation, while he sat in the shade.
The ancient mechanics of wealth generation are reserved for the people who possess the discipline to map the 6 levels and climb in absolute silence. The architect shares this ruthless framework with the few who step out of the herd to search for the actual mechanism. The group that studies this dark architecture is expanding right here on this screen. Stay close to the fire. You are on the side that sees.